Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you each and every time you do it, whether you're watching us live via YouTube or if you're downloading it later on. Share it with people as well. Let people know what's going on because a lot of people still asking, and it's interesting. It is a thumbnail sketch of how information spreads. There are people still to this day, 10 years after the fact, that didn't know, were fairly regular listeners to the old radio program, that had no idea that I had gone through chemotherapy to beat a rare form of lymphoma. And they said, well, I listened. I thought I listened because we didn't make a big deal out of it. And that's unfortunately sometimes my problem. I am terrible at blowing my own horn. If there is a weakness I have, it is blowing my own horn. So if anyone is a trumpet player out there, join in. On the subject of blowing our own horn, big doings for Monday morning's program. Yes. Rumble will be coming. Thank you all, because there's a metric in Rumble that says you can't stream live unless you have a certain number of followers or you pay in advance. So I was hoping to get that number of followers. Of course, it's that catch-22. You need to do something before somebody will follow you. But thank you all for following me without me having to do anything except saying so. And again, just a couple of times yesterday. So there's a Rumble channel. It is under the name JTITM. We'll probably have to tweak that. Several people have consulted me that people know you as Joe Thomas in the morning. Don't be too cute by half. Nobody knows who JTITM is. It might be fine for the folks in the SOCMED world, but that's it. Lots for this morning. The suspect in the Waynesboro standoff shooting identified, funny, from Charlottesville. Odd that. I thought Charlottesville was one of those gun-free places. Maybe they had to go over the mountain to Waynesboro to enforce something. Maybe they had a beef about something. Also, in a related story, there was a story out of, I think it was Kentucky. An 8-year-old was poisoned by what everyone was claiming were bad strawberries at a fundraiser. Turns out, no, it was fentanyl that his dad was distributing. And yet we can't seem to come up with a scenario, at least in Virginia now, if you make pills with fentanyl, which I can see where the lawyers could come in saying, hey, the guy's just the last leg of the distribution network. How did he know what was in a phony OxyContin pill or anything like that? So we'll get into some of that. Also, I sat down in a press gaggle of other Virginia media people with Senator Mark Warner. I am awaiting the video of this. This is one of those weird transitional things. See, all of Mark Warner's people know my old email address. They don't have the new one, which is up here, jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com. I have forwarded it to them at like 3 a.m. Hopefully some of the congressional staffers get up early in the morning so I can get the video of me talking to Mark Warner, because his answer I thought was fascinating. Mark Warner, I won't belabor the story yet. We'll get into it when it comes up. But he had a very interesting answer to my question regarding whether or not the Dolly, the freighter ship that hit the Key Bridge, had been the victim of a cyber attack, because over the last 48 hours or so, the story comes out, and then the next day, social media is full of people saying, you can't ask that, it's unproven. and it reminded me of the good old days of ivermectin. when back before the FDA said, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you probably should have been taking ivermectin all that time. But that being said, it was just a funny time, as I felt that deja vu when people are saying, you can't ask that. That's unproven conspiracy theory stuff. That's a right-wing internet trope. When really the source of it was a website that actually isn't even right-wing per se. So it's interesting that we're going through. They just went to the drawer. We go, yes, this is how we handled ivermectin before. But Mark Warner's answer was kind of fascinating to me. I won't belabor it yet. Well, hopefully his staff will get me the main video they shot of the interaction, because I was fascinated by his answer, because he had spent, I'd say, 80% of the press gaggle bashing right-wing conspiracy theories and things like that. And then I handed him one, and he didn't bash it. Also, did President Biden just say he wasn't going to continue to pursue charges against Julian Assange? And by the way, 434-882-4217 is how you call and make a comment. Drop it into the voicemail, and then we'll play it for the gathering, and then I'll answer. If it's a question, I'll answer that. If it's a comment, I'll rejoin on it as well. You can also send them in to the email, as I mentioned, jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com. And for those who keep asking, what's the timeline? We sit and wait. It is the federal bureaucracy. The Federal Communications Commission has our application to transfer the license for WTON. I also had some great meetings yesterday regarding having a new Charlottesville home, so stay tuned. Also, I want to thank the folks at Talk Media Network for facilitating that and perhaps more. Stay tuned for that. So we'll get into the president and what he may have signaled may be coming up on Julian Assange. And how did somebody who at one point was the singularly most covered person in all the newsrooms of all of America. Why, even the smallest local newsroom had a file full of ways to connect Orenthal James Simpson to a local something. I'm sure at some point Orenthal James Simpson probably visited some Virginia college before he chose USC. I'm sure that everyone had it. Everyone had a way to connect O.J. Simpson to a local story, because he was at one point the singularly most covered person in the United States. How do you go from that nadir to most people I know saying, I didn't know O.J. had cancer? Now, certainly we pointed out that you who listened to my old radio program every day, some of you didn't know I had cancer. I beat it. O.J. did not, and succumbed to cancer. I was actually shocked at how young he was. I would have, if you had said how old was Orenthal James Simpson, I would have said 80-something. A young 70s, I think 76, succumbed to cancer in Nevada yesterday. And it made me wonder, because we were just talking about President Biden and what he was signaling about Julian Assange, and I was curious, because here's O.J. Simpson and Julian Assange, and you can make the case that Julian Assange has been in jail for 5 years, but he was in some manner exile for much longer than that. Remember, this goes back to showing us what Hillary Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz was doing behind the scenes in the Democratic Party. Julian Assange's crime is he let you see behind the curtain. And very little, if anything, that Julian Assange or WikiLeaks has shown you has ever been debunked. Most things that Julian Assange has reported through WikiLeaks was, you're not supposed to know that. That's generally his crime, is he's let you see something that you're not supposed to see. So I did a little searching, and technically, Orenthal James Simpson, for the assault on the car dealer, spent more time behind an actual prison wall than Julian Assange has so far. And yes, the punchlines can write themselves. The real killer can rest easy this morning. O.J. Simpson is no longer chasing him. Things like that. But just spend a moment. And I know the media, and we're not going to belabor the O.J. Simpson point too much. But just for historical context, this was the biggest at the time television program in the United States at the time. It was Larry King Live. It was the only reason most people watched CNN. And this was as it happened live that night. The most, I think, famous part of the whole O.J. Simpson story really came to a bear at this point in the midst of the whole trial going on there. It turned out to be the car because eventually O.J. Did you not hear? I'm sorry, you didn't hear.
And we could only guess as to why not.
Larry King and his
I guess they're just being
They may
careful.
fear that there are arms in that car. They may fear that...
into another interview.
I'm going to have to interrupt this call. I understand we're going to go to a live picture in Los Angeles. Is that correct? Okay. This is Interstate 5, and this is courtesy of KCALR, one of our LA affiliates. Police believe that O.J. Simpson is in that car. Now they're telling me that they believe that this vehicle is registered to Al Cowlings, one of O.J.'s oldest friends, a teammate at Southern Cal.
And it turned out, yes, it was.
And they believe that Al
calling the police and saying, "This is O.J. This is AC. I've got O.J. in the car." That was the whole situation that was going on as the NBA playoffs. I believe actually the last time the New York Knickerbockers were in the NBA playoffs, this was happening. But so much culturally is connected still to this case. We have the Kardashians because of O.J. Simpson. Robert Kardashian, the actual biological father of all of your favorite internet celebrities, the Kardashians, and was O.J.'s lawyer. Was actually O.J.'s lawyer, not all the Dream Team guys. But more than that, Black Lives Matter traces its roots back to the O.J. Simpson trial. It was the defense that was working the hardest against the prosecution of O.J. Simpson for the death of his wife and a restaurant waiter, Ron Perlman, and Nicole Brown Simpson. But Johnny Cochran's defense was that Black Lives Matter and that O.J. Simpson was being persecuted because he was a black man married to a white girl. There's a very poignant point in one of the docudramas that was made of it. Now, this was one of the prosecution attorneys, Chris Darden, was furious because he was a black man and he made the case over and over again that O.J. Simpson left the black community in his rearview mirror when he became famous and never came back again, yet that Johnny Cochran was trying to rally the black community for somebody who had no interest in being in the black community whatsoever. But if you want to look for the beginnings of the Black Lives Matter movement, look no further than the O.J. trial. So there's a lot of cultural American life even today that directly connects back to the trial of Orenthal James Simpson. So how does that guy become the guy that nobody even knew was sick, but passed away yesterday at the age 76? I had the note here somewhere.
This is the Racing Wire Minute with Brian Belansky.
400 miles at Texas. That story next.
She can stand, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can stand.
Learn more at She Can STEM.
NASCAR returns to Texas Motor Speedway this weekend. Its second and final visit to the Lone Star State in 2024. It's the second mile and a half on the schedule, so we can look back at Las Vegas to make some guesses about who might be strong on Sunday. Kyle Larson won at Vegas, so he needs to be part of the discussion. And William Byron is super hot right now. Another driver to keep your eye on, Martin Truex Jr. He's had some frustrating finishes recently, including a couple of near wins. Don't be surprised if he goes to victory lane for the first time in 2024. One thing is for sure, Texas is very fast, wicked fast, crazy fast, and the drivers say the lap around the place can be quite an adventure.
Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon. Otherwise, partly sunny afternoon, highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
All right, there was supposed to be a caller playing there. Somebody called in during the break. Let's see. Let's see if we can't get him in here. He called in during the break, so I want to get his point in here. So let's. There he is. Okay, let's play him now.
Hi, Joe. My name is Kelly. I'm calling from Inside Radio. You can.
that's not the call we wanted in there. Where's the one that we just got in this morning a little while ago? Yeah, this is the one that I thought we had in here, but maybe we didn't. Maybe they didn't leave a voicemail for us. So if that's the case, then apologies for you there. But let's do that again and see if we can't get it here. A couple other comments in here regarding O.J. Simpson. This one from Mike, who writes into JT in the morning radio at gmail.com. He said, "Thank you for reminding us, Joe, that O.J. is the reason we have the Kardashians. As if the trial wasn't bad enough, it's the gift that keeps on giving." Well, and I don't mean to be mean about that. I was just pointing out the fact that there is a cultural context to the O.J. trial, and we have to remember it. We have to always. Did we get the right call in right now? Okay, let's get this one in here.
Hello, Dolly. This is Louis Dolly. Mark Warner is a lying sack of crap. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, and who expected a Louis Armstrong rant this morning? Okay, very good. But this is the point, and it wasn't that there was a Mark Warner point to it. I wanted to get what his statement was, because he is the chair of the Intel Committee, and I wanted to see what their spin on the Dolly story was, especially in light of 24 hours of, you can't ask that. That's like saying you could take ivermectin for COVID-19. Because the reaction, and if you go online and look up Dolly cyber attack, you will see it's almost like they've cut and pasted the name, the phrases cyber attack and freighter ship Dolly in the place of ivermectin and COVID-19. Because just asking, say, hey, there's a report that, what did we say? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But what if you just ask, is anyone smell smoke? Anyone else smell smoke? And when I get the audio, you'll hear, and so since you brought it up, so Mark Warner's response after 80% of his press gaggle bashing right-wing conspiracy theories and the right wing for holding up FISA and all of this, I'm thinking, oh, this guy's just going to go off on another right-wing rant, and he didn't. And that tells me that there's more there than people think. And the crowd on the internet saying, oh, you can't ask that question, because according to Mark Warner, they are investigating the allegations that there were cyber attacks against the Dolly before it crashed into the Key Bridge. And if they're investigating these allegations, if they're acknowledging these allegations, I thought that was a stunning admission. And it's as close as you're going to get from Mark Warner to an admission of this kind of thing. If not, now there's another side to this, which is flaw or feature. Does the idea that the Dolly being a victim of a cyber attack then empower the FISA reauthorization, the 702 reauthorization, get rid of those 54 amendments, never mind what the House Freedom Caucus says? We need continuous surveillance. We need to know that there is an NSA agent assigned to each and every one of you bastards, because somebody made that ship crash. One of you people. And so be careful how you use all this information. This is just pure data. I wanted to see what Mark Warner's reaction was to this story regarding the Dolly and a cyber attack. And he said they were not discounting it. Now, like I said, flaw or feature, you decide, because it does lead you to the position of then being able to say, because he had gone into quite a rant about the FISA reauthorization and how the House Freedom Caucus was a bunch of right-wing Looney Tunes hanging up the FISA reauthorization, and my gosh, we need to be looking after you people. So hard on the heels of that to say, yeah, I mean, we're going to look into whether or not that Dolly was a victim of a cyber attack. That becomes a useful tool to the surveillance state to then convince you again. Look, I mean, the bridge. We need better cyber security. And nobody asks because they want to make sure they continue to get invited to these things or whatnot. Nobody asks the question, well, what were the security protocols at this point? I mean, were they on Wi-Fi? Were they using Verizon? Did they have McAfee? What was the firewall on the ship? And by the way, I mean, was there a voting machine on the ship? And was it connected to the internet? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm piling on the voting machines connected to the internet. We say this, of course, doing this connected to the internet, and who knows? I mean, YouTube might strike this show. I'm already on strike 2 with YouTube. That's why it's exciting that come Monday we will be here. We will stay here on YouTube. There's some technological stuff that involves something called Restream. There's some software I have to download called Restream that allows me to send the feed out of my studio both to Rumble and to YouTube. But we come to Rumble. You guys got the channel up, so we will. If YouTube hits me with strike 3, to be fair, it's actually strike 2. There was warning 1, and this would be strike 2, which I think is a month of suspension from YouTube's platform. So never a moment too soon. Enough of you followed the JTITM page at Rumble to allow us to stream for free to you via Rumble. So we'll have the Rumble link as well as the YouTube link if it still exists on Monday. But who knows? Because this Dolly cyber attack story is being treated with the exact same process that was used to stop people from being inquisitive regarding ivermectin's use in the battle against COVID-19, I found that to be an interesting paradigm because it just seems so familiar. And if you just do a quick search into Dolly cyber attack key bridge, something like that, you will find that as you read these posts and all of the debunkings, it is exactly the same way people were treated when they started saying, hey, did you hear that ivermectin is pretty effective against COVID-19? How dare you? That's a horse dewormer. I actually think I read one of the posts that said, you can't say they used a horse dewormer to shut off the bridge controls on the Dolly. And, you know, when you start cutting and pasting, weird things can happen. And I will finish up here with this moment of kind of humorous oopsies regarding the O.J. Simpson decidency. As one of the websites that was reporting on the passage of Orenthal James Simpson accidentally posted that Trump had been released from prison after serving 9 years. The Los Angeles Times, a newspaper, to be fair, should know a little bit about the O.J. trial, reported on the death of the 76-year-old former NFL running back earlier in the morning, detailing the prolific sports career as well as his 1994 infamous double murder trial. However, at one point in the Los Angeles Times story, further down in the obituary, the article referred to Trump having been released from prison instead of Simpson. The quote from the Los Angeles Times is, "Long before the city woke up on a fall morning in 2017, Trump walked out of the Lovelock Correctional Center outside Reno, a free man for the first time in 9 years." You see what happens when you play too much cut and paste with some of these things. And it's not like they didn't have a story already ready to go that said Trump was just released from prison.
Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny afternoon, highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for joining in, tuning in, sharing the video on YouTube. This was in and amongst the historical figures that resurfaced. Ever wonder what happened to? And this is the last bit, although I find a few of you have found the interesting conjunction with President Biden. And we'll get to what President Biden said about Julian Assange. And signaling perhaps that the U.S. government is going to stop pursuing the WikiLeaks founder. You knew that some of the historical figures, and many of them have passed away. Like I mentioned, Robert Kardashian is gone, but his kids linger on. Kato Kaelin was back on the scene. It looked like he was on with, was it Jesse Waters? Yesterday to get some of his fame and fortune back, as somebody said, "Hey, do we still have Jesse Waters on our feed?" And no, not yet. And somebody said, "Yeah, I still have Jesse Waters' number." So this was Jesse. Yesterday with Kato Kaelin, the House guest of America, on the death of O.J. Simpson at 76, and what he remembers of him, and was he ever close friends with him?
Gear acquisition.
I'm sorry. That's not the video. Can we get the actual video from Jesse Waters? We did this. Oh, I guess it's the internet. You can never. There he is. There's the Jesse Waters' video.
How close of a friend was OJ to you?
Well, I always said this, Jesse, not a real close friend. I always put it that in tax terms, he was Danish and I was donuts. So not a close friend. I didn't hang out. In the time that I was there, probably a handful of times just hanging out.
Okay. And now he's passed. What do you think of him as a person?
You know, I look at it, and foremost, Jesse, I would just say that I would just put out my condolences just to the kids, to Sydney and Justin, and to Arlene and Jason. And you know, losing a father, that's never easy. But everything that I'm feeling when I woke up this morning and saw the messages go out to the Goldmans, Kim and Fred Goldman, and I expressed my condolences to them. And of course, I cherish memories of Nicole, and you know, she was a beacon of light. She really was. She was bright and she was funny, and I don't think people shouldn't forget that. It's really about
and of course, you're reminded why Kato Kaelin's acting career never really materialized into what to seriously. But then they asked him the key question in it all, which was the question that gripped everyone and grips everyone to this day regarding. As we connected the Assange story to the OJ story.
They say he's innocent. Do you believe O.J. Simpson is innocent?
No, I give my opinion. My opinion was I think he's guilty. I have that opinion, and I still believe that today. And I was listening to this show, and you sort of encapsulated the last 30 years, and I was going, oh your monologue is just, it brought back so much to my feelings.
Brought back so many to my the audio again. We need the audio of Kato, but he said no. I don't think he was. I think he was guilty, and that's fine. But he said he thought he was guilty, and that he hopes he makes peace with God now. But passing at 76 now, we can move on to other things. And I thought this was the more interesting story from the national headlines was, did the president signal that he might be ready to drop the charges against Julian Assange? And that's the bigger problem is that we have a guy who, for all intents purposes, is being held for letting you know something that nobody has said wasn't true. So you can't say he was engaged in perjury. He didn't lie to you. He didn't say he didn't kill Nicole and Ron. But is guilty in publishing something that they said he shouldn't publish. And maybe I'm wrong to connect this to our issues with social media in general, but if Julian Assange can be guilty for publishing something that you weren't supposed to see or weren't supposed to know about, why is Facebook and YouTube and all these other social media platforms allowed to dodge? I mean, if I go on right now and say something slanderous about O.J. Simpson or Kato Kaelin or Julian Assange, their lawyers can go after me, but they can't go after YouTube for it because YouTube is just an aggregator. Why is Julian Assange's WikiLeaks any different than that? There are folks who say, well, it's because he posted everything. It wasn't an algorithmic thing. People weren't just posting stuff to WikiLeaks and sharing it out there. But here's the story about the president. President Biden said yesterday that he is considering a request from Australia to drop the decades-long U.S. push to prosecute Assange for publishing a trove of American documents, classified, many certainly flashpointing on the 2016 publication of the documents that included Hillary Clinton and the now famous chain of emails that showed how they screwed Bernie Sanders out of even being able to have a running chance at the presidential nomination in 2016. Australia has called on the U.S. to drop its prosecution for some time. Australian citizen Assange is, but the president, who was hosting Japanese Prime Minister Kishida, said, "We're considering it." He's been indicted on 17 espionage charges and 1 charge of computer misuse over his website's publication of varied documents, including the Manning files, Chelsea Manning. But, you know, and maybe I'm wrong to connect the two stories, the OJ and the Julian Assange, but the amount of time and treasure that was spent trying to get to the bottom of who killed Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, I think pales in the amount of time we've spent chasing this guy around and trying to get him out of England and out of all these other places where he was escaping his prosecutions. And at the end of it, I think that it still needs to be brought home to the idea that if Julian Assange is guilty for publishing these things on WikiLeaks, why can we not then go after someone else like a YouTube or a Facebook for publishing things that are slanderous lies about a presidential candidate, whether it be Joe Biden, Donald Trump, or Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? And that, I think, is the key substance to where we have to get back into reality on this. Is this just another instance, like with ivermectin and like with the Dolly cyber attack stories, where the government is going after somebody who is asking a question or pointing out something that they don't want you to know about? Because at all of these things, as they all come together, it's about the government feeling that their survival is more important than your knowing the truth. And if there's an indication of anything, whether it be anything Manning released to WikiLeaks or John Podesta's email hack or any of those things, it's that there are things the government is doing that they don't want you to know about. And in a free society that is citizen governed, that's a dangerous, dangerous place to be. You can't allow for that. Whether you like WikiLeaks or Julian Assange, and certainly the charges of treason brought against Manning, that's well within. But once the documents were verified as actual documents, Julian Assange didn't do anything other than the New York Times did with the Pentagon Papers. New York Times didn't go to prison. The publisher of the New York Times didn't have to spend years in exile hiding from U.S. extradition. And yet the New York Times is one of the first and foremost will be out there saying Julian Assange needs to be arrested. Probably, and this is just having been around a lot of media folks, probably because the New York Times was more upset that Julian Assange got it and they didn't. Because we're shallow folks like that. Hey, there was tornado watches through the area, and what do you do in the case of a tornado coming through your town? Jack Maxwell, one of the storm chasers and one of the great emergency technician and leaders in the community in terms of trying to make people aware of that kind of stuff, is coming up on Joe Thomas in the Morning, coming Monday to Rumble. So make sure you go, and we'll share if you're a Facebook follower, either through WTON Radio or Seville Joe Thomas on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter. It's now JTITM on Twitter, and that's we changed the Twitter handle because there was this awkward connection to the old radio station in there. The account is JTITM Virginia. pardon me, is the Twitter account for me, and WTON Radio on Twitter. We'll post to all those places when we have the Rumble account all set up later today, so you'll be able to follow us there, or we will still be here to YouTube once we have this Restream software downloaded.
Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny afternoon, highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. We had tornado watches through the area yesterday evening, and Jack Maxwell, SVilleTF17.com is his website. Storm chasing and emergency preparedness is his game. Jack, good morning. How are you doing, sir?
It's been a long night. How are you?
I imagine it has. So tell us, because this is one of what has been about 3 or 4 dozen extremely windy, blustery, stormy days in central Virginia over the past few weeks even. Has this been a particularly active time for these kind of tumultuous storms?
Well, we're in the severe weather season right now, and it's not usual for us to have these types of watches issued, especially tornado warnings is really rare for us to have them. Due to the fact that Tornado Alley has moved eastward now, which means we're lucky enough to have more of these types of situations. But due to the fact that we have the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Allegheny Front when the storms come through, they will weaken more and more every time they come over the Allegheny Front. And the Blue Ridge Mountains, Skyline Drive area will help us protect us from those tornadoes from happening. I know that we had one tornado warning out of Martinsville yesterday. So that's the only one I'm aware of that had a tornado warning. Other than that, it was just a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings for Van County, Buckingham, and Nelson counties. But other than that, in Elmer County last night. But other than that, smooth sailing right now. I don't have a count right now of how many people lost power last night. We just want to make sure that people are able to be prepared for this. Mm-hmm. Make sure you make a plan, build a kit, know what to do if there's a tornado warning. Make sure you go to the low line area of your basement. If you have a basement, enclosed area, stay away from windows. Make sure you hold your neck down, and make sure you have your way to receive notifications. You could go to radyscottsville.org, which is a good website. It's all important information about preparedness, weather information for Scottsville. And we are hoping that we can promote this out and about for people. We're working on developing an application for people to download. We just want people to be aware of their types of situations where you can be more prepared and save more lives.
Jack, what is the difference between a tornado watch, tornado warning? Because, people hear them, of course, both have equal impact to a lot of folks. Yes. But what is the difference when somebody hears there's a tornado watch versus a tornado warning?
Well, a watch means potential possibilities of it happening. So it's the chances of it happening. A warning means imminent or it's occurring. So if it's a warning, you want to take shelter. It's a watch if you just want to monitor your situational awareness of what's going on around the area. So basically, a watch means possibility, chances of likely of it happening, but warning means imminent or happening less than 24 hours.
And what are the differences in the things you should be prepared for? Obviously, you mentioned power outages through the area. The trees, one of the things that Central Virginia prides itself on is its wooded tree areas, but that also means a lot of power lines run through there. And our friend Chief Warner with drone responders has certainly talked to me frequently about the great work that the electric companies use drones for to identify these outages, but also in your own home, prunings and things like that can help keep even your own property from having damage on your electric lines.
We just make sure if you lose power, to have your generator outside, not inside. Make sure you have your carbon monoxide detectors, smoke detectors. I know that local fire and rescue of city and Albemarle County offered those for free, and you can contact your local fire department to set up a time for them to come install them for free. For smoke detectors, make sure you don't burn any candles. Make sure you keep your refrigerator closed to keep things cold. Do not use your oven or electric gas stove as a heating source. That's how people die in carbon dioxide poisonings every year. Just doing that. Make sure you have a weather radio. They're pretty cheap on Amazon. Just search weather radio, and they're pretty easy to program. Just make sure you guys understand the difference between how to be prepared. Make sure you have that communication plan. Make sure you know what you're going to do. If you're being asked to evacuate, make sure you evacuate. Know where your evacuations are for getting out of your house. Make sure you have a to-go bag in case you have to evacuate. Make sure you have your important documents like your social security information, your bank information. Make sure you carry cash. If you lose power, ATMs don't work. Make sure you have important information, your medication, a first aid kit, bunch of sources. Like I said, you could go to radyscottsville.org, and we have a wonderful Facebook page, social media accounts we use to blast out this information.
Jack, the summer is coming, and the summer is
Yes.
in this area is replete with not just
Brutal.
tornadic activity.
It's brutal.
but also things like microbursts,
Yeah.
because those are going to come up even before we can get a warning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, microburst is that's a downburst of wind, and it can cause similar to what a tornado damage looks like. But people get confused about what is microburst. Microburst is just complete straight line winds, and that's when we had that. I guess it was 2011, 2012 when we had that derecho.
Yeah, the
If I'm
derecho was
Yeah,
that
the
was,
derecho, that was a straight line wind event. So all those with downburst, microburst, and tornadoes look identical to what a tornado damage looks like. So basically, it's a straight line windstorm, which is hurricane strength potential. It's a downburst of wind downburst of wind, and it cause major damage, anything in its path. To make sure you have a way to notify your power companies, make sure you report your power outage quickly, and make sure you have a good source of information to get alerted. Let's make sure you stay hydrated this summer. I know that heat down here in Central Virginia is quite brutal, and when we lose power, it's even more brutal. Make sure you stay hydrated. Make sure you have a supply slash you a gallon of water per day, and it lasts up to 7 days to have enough supplies. Canned food. Make sure you have check your emergency first aid kit, see if anything expires, and make sure you have your weather radio, and make sure you have your cell phone charged.
And it's Jack. We're also expanding now over into the Shenandoah Valley, and you mentioned that the Blue Ridge Mountains provides a
Yes.
buffer for the Charlottesville and Scottsville areas, but you see a lot more of this stuff hitting the Shenandoah Valley,
Yeah.
especially in tornadoes and things like that. Is there? And I don't know in the industry, Jack, but is in the industry that you're in, the emergency preparedness, but also weather, do they share predictions? Is there a group that feels like this may be a worse season, more milder season for tornadoes, microbursts, and all that kind of stuff that can really wreak havoc quickly in areas, even including the Shenandoah Valley?
I have not seen any of those statistics yet. I know that National Weather Service up in, I guess, is depending on where you're at in the Shenandoah Valley. I think it's Baltimore Washington Field Office has a good website, which is weather.gov/LWX, and it gives you pretty good information about how to be prepared, important weather details, all that kind of good stuff regarding that type of information. I know that because of where the Shenandoah Valley is, and where it's behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, but it's in front of the Allegheny Front.
Mm-hmm.
So the Allegheny Front usually keeps it quickly makes storms weaker as they come over that. When they come over the Blue Ridge Mountains, they even more weaker. So make sure you understand the medium power is a great asset over there. Make sure you know how to prepare.
Last one for you, Jack, and you've been a volunteer with the rescue squads in there. I mean, it's important as members of the community, number one, to understand that fire departments, rescue squads, if they haven't established an actual shelter in these kind of storm activities over the summer, that you can at least call over there and maybe they have some respite space for the time being. But also, if you can volunteer for these groups in your hometown, that's a big boon to the community, right?
Yeah, so basically, if you're a big volunteer and you want to help out the community, reach out to your local county fire and rescue, see what they have an opportunity. Also volunteer for the Red Cross. I know that they're looking for volunteers everywhere for public safety. Make sure you check on your neighbors. This is number one. If you live near anybody who's a senior citizen or any of those who have trouble mobility issues, make sure you check on those folks during the heat. Make sure they have plenty of survival gear. Like I said, just reach out to your local community. Contact the local fire department, schedule a visit, see what it's like. We love having kids come visit fire and rescue. They love to see what we do, and it's pretty awesome to have those kiddos come out.
Hey, Greg, Jack, Greg just posted to the YouTube feed. He said, I may have missed it, but you need to practice your plans more than once, not just having them, but actually walking
So
through
make
them.
sure you do practice your fire drills, change your smoke detectors every monthly you have a fire drill in your house. And when time changes, I guess it's in the fall.
Yeah, next one.
Change your smoke detectors, batteries, your carbon monoxide batteries, and make sure you have a way to practice those drills, go over your emergency preparedness gear, and that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. It's readyscottsville.com.
Scottsville.org.
I'm sorry. It's readyscottsville.org.
And you can find social media. Let's search YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Or actually, X. Look up Brady Scottsville.
Okay.
Pop up.
Well, I appreciate it, and get some rest.
Yeah, I'm planning on to. Hope you have good luck with your new industry. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny afternoon, highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning, as the graphic would indicate. We will be on Rumble starting on Monday. We'll also be here on YouTube. So if you like YouTube, I'm already on strike 2, waiting for, I think it's a month. No. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Strike 2 was a month suspension from YouTube. I'm not quite sure what. Strike 3 may be it for us. So thank you for those who actually signed up enough and got us onto Rumble, got enough followers for the page. So we'll be able to put this program up on Rumble as well tomorrow morning. So got this comment. We were talking about, obviously, the story that all the national network people are talking about is the passage of Orenthal James Simpson from heavenly into the heavenly host, and perhaps the smell of fire and brimstone have replaced the smell of Febreze and cigarettes at the casinos of Las Vegas, where O.J. was living these last few years. But in and amongst this, quietly, the president said they're considering an Australian call to drop the charges against Julian Assange and drop their attempts to get him back in the United States. Gary in Berlin, New Hampshire, writes on the YouTube comment page, which is apparently working. And I want to take a moment here and thank Tommy Stafford from Blue Ridge Life magazine, who said, "Hey Joe, making and it seems intuitive. If we weren't doing anything particularly salacious here, so I figured this is important stuff that kids could hear. It's stuff I would be doing in front of my kids if they were here, so I didn't feel like there was any reason to say it wasn't safe for kids, but apparently that limited the things that you could do on the feed. So the chat is now working on the YouTube channel as well. Gary posts, I bet Julian had more to post about the government, and that is why he was forced into exile within our best allies' territory. And that's, well, the thing is, whether he had more to post or was just going to continue to be a place to post these things. These are the same folks who, if you walk down a hallway in the West Wing and overhear a conversation between two people who are discussing a conversation that a fourth person had, you can be a whistleblower and get a president of the United States impeached. But if you actually have access to documents that you think, oh my God, we're doing this, and you send them to somebody, and then once they're verified as accurate, he publishes them, and it makes people look bad and perhaps compromises state security. One wonders whether that statement is the security of you and me or the security of the state, which, as we've learned, continuing into the FBI interviews yesterday on Capitol Hill, becomes an interesting question. Are we talking about, when we talk about national security, are we talking about the security of the people who live in the nation or the government of the nation? Because it seems murky to some. Flaw or feature, file this under that same banner, where Mark Warner acknowledged to us yesterday that they are looking into the allegations that there was a cyber attack on the Dolly, and didn't go into what it was a predictable rant against right-wing conspiracy theories. I thought it was interesting. But again, flaw or feature, where you say, is Mark Warner setting up for more reasons that we should have bigger, deeper, faster, broader, sweeping abilities to surveil American citizens, whether or not? Because here's one of the things in the FISA that you don't know. So obviously FISA is designed to only allow surveillance of American citizens if they are alleged to have had contact with foreign nationals who are on our bad guys list. And that was the premise of the Steele dossier, was that Donald Trump and some of his staffers had contact with these Russians that were on our list of bad guys. So then FISA could be used to go after Donald Trump. And it all turned out to be phony baloney. And that's the bigger part of this, is once identified as phony baloney, why was it not identified as phony baloney at the time? And one of the things about FISA is, again, given its nature, you're not allowed to defend yourself if somebody says, hey, Joe Thomas was talking to a Russian. Hey, do you know Joe Thomas did a segment on the RT network? That's Russia. Maybe we should surveil him. And that becomes the premise to all of this. But now we have situations where people are using jumpers, and I don't understand all the technology, but they will hack, basically using VPN technology, into your Wi-Fi, and then use that to send out things like hacks and cyber attacks. So they're not even doing it from a server they can be connected to. They're doing it from some safe zone where you look like the guy who sent the cyber attack to the Dolly. Some kid in Dundalk, Maryland, is sitting there scrolling Pornhub, and all of a sudden the FBI is knocking down the door. He's like, no, I have a subscription. And then it turns out to be more about the fact that his Wi-Fi network had been usurped and used to break into the security systems on a freighter ship. And so when I heard that, that was my second reaction. My first reaction was, really? Mark Warner isn't just discarding it, because the internet over the past day and a half has been treating the question of whether or not the Dolly had been the victim of a cyber attack in the same way they were treating, almost exactly word to word, the way they treated people saying, hey, did you hear that ivermectin does pretty good against COVID-19? This in the light, and it's interesting because when I got to ask Mark Warner the question, and we are still awaiting the video of it, again, this the awkward transitions from the radio home that I used to have to here, and our email, which is jtinthemorningradio@gmail.com. But a lot of these staffers, when they download the video, they just send it automatically. I'm sure somewhere, some person at my old employer has gotten an email from Mark Warner's office saying, download this video now. I'm thinking, the hell do I want to download this video for? So at some point you'll be able to hear it. We'll clip it, and just my first reaction is because he had spent the first 20 minutes of the press gaggle just going after the right-wing conspiracy theory, House Freedom Caucus uploading and upending FISA, and we had done some great things, and FISA, and we need FISA to be real. We need 702 back. I'm sorry, did I violate your personal space with that? If you're just listening as you drive, you didn't see what I just did to the camera, and you don't need to. But the issue is, does this story, and this is where you have to be careful because martial arts will teach you, Sun Tzu, same thing. So they float a story that the Dolly was the victim of a cyber attack. Goes out on the internet. The internet takes the predictable ivermectin approach to it. But then people like Mark Warner says, no, we're actually looking at that. And less indicative of whether or not you and I actually think that the Dolly was the victim of a cyber attack is, what does that mean it's going to be used for? And I'm sorry if this becomes one of those where, Joe, you sure you want some padding on the walls around you in your studio just where you start bouncing around? Maybe one of those hug yourself smoking jackets, just to keep you safe, Joe. So before you call in, red flag warning on me that I may be a danger to myself, this is unfortunately how PSYOPs works. Dr. Robert Malone just did a great piece on PSYOPs and liberty just over this past weekend. He's been going around doing this for quite a bit, and how they will, as the song lyric goes, take your worst fears, use them against you, to get you to basically give in to their demands. And it continues because every time we catch on to it, they have to add another layer to it. So I know it sounds crazy-making to start saying, well, hold it, could the story that was out in the interwebs 3 days ago of the possibility that the Dolly was the victim of a cyber attack actually be laid out there so that people like you and me would say, yeah, you know what? Bob Good is wrong. Bob Good is wrong. We need FISA. You know what? We need more FISA. We need FISA plus. We need to supersize FISA. Because people will do that. People are like, you know what? I have nothing to be afraid of. Like Martin Niemöller said, first they came for the communists, the socialists. And I said nothing because I wasn't a socialist. So you think you have nothing to fear. Read Harvey Silverglate's book, 3 Felonies a Day, before you say, I have nothing to worry about. It's, give FISA, what are you hiding? Why do you want so much privacy, Joe? And besides, don't you know that the Constitution was written by racists anyway? Privacy. Look at what privacy got us with O.J. Simpson. Yeah, I had to go bring the O.J. stuff back in there. Mac's going to take us to his notebook in a moment.
Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny afternoon, highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for allowing us to do this in its new space here, the video space. And for those who are asking, a couple of folks asked me about what happens when WTON goes on the air and we eventually get a new Charlottesville radio transmission frequency home. We may keep the video thing going on, but it means I have to shave every morning, and that's always a concern. That's a lot more work than I have time for.
I'm going through all my sweatshirts. I'm changing shirts. I got to look fairly, casual but good.
Mac McDonald is here to open his notebook. Those are sponsorable opportunities. I mean, I'm sitting here. I mean, VCU should be paying money for this logo
for
placement.
sure.
I mean, you think about
for sure.
Jerry Seinfeld taught us this with all the cereal boxes that he used to pay for, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's salary with. How are you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing good. Had a lot of fun yesterday, first round because the weather moved out of Augusta quickly. And then, so I was able to follow the Masters till 8 o'clock last night when they finally said, okay, everybody come in. I think 27, there are 9 groups left, 27 players left, including Tiger, who will go to 14 today, 14T, finished up on 13. And now we'll play. And he's 1 under par and hanging in, but there's so many. He's such a diva now with his injury and his ankle and everything, his back. He's such. But he had to get up at 4 this morning and go through therapy. 23 holes today. It's going to be a long day for Tiger, and so on and so forth. Oh, and by the way, Bryson DeChambeau is still the mad scientist. He's still doing something, pretty crazy. But anyway, I had a lot of fun following it yesterday. As always, this is But today, catch a flight tonight. I'm moving to Charlotte. Head up to Blacksburg. I'll be there for the spring game on Saturday. I'll have all the details for you Monday morning.
Very good. So you have some coverage of the Masters.
And the lead story, of course, the mad scientist who, in all this wind and everything, shot 65. Bryson DeChambeau, he opened with his 7 under in the first round, and he is playing with this custom set of irons that he put together. They're made by a new company, and he's been tinkering with his new company. They're same length irons, and for the non-golfer, that's a little rare, but they're custom beat, some new company called Avoda, and they just got approved by the USGA, and he put him in the bag on Monday. So anyway, his quote was, "When I miss a hit on the toe or the heel, it seems to fly a lot straighter." Well, I'm looking up the website. If that's the case, then I'm trying. But
we all need that.
He says it. He said it allows me to be more comfortable. Well, if Bryson's comfortable, but the reason I kind of follow him is Bryson has a putter made by friends of mine that I made in Florida because they were in the suite right next to where we were working when I was working in the golf industry. So anyway, it's kind of, but anyway, Bryson growing up, he's 30 years old, feeling that he's maturing now and being a better player.
I try to be a little bit smarter out there on the golf course and not try and go for broke and just go for every flag, but place it in the right position. I'm not old, I still feel like I'm a youngster, but it's definitely taken time to get comfortable and get into a place where, no matter what happens today, I'm okay. I got a great life outside of the game of golf, and my friends are still going to be my friends, and the people that love me the most are still going to love me. And taking that perspective has definitely enlightened me a little bit and allowed me to play a little more free.
Yeah, if I just got a check for 125 million, which he did for Live, I'd probably be pretty comfortable too. I'd probably play a little golf and probably be, if I lose a $10 NASA, I'm okay.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
anyway, he tees it up at 11:54 today. The other story, Scotty Scheffler, who told the press this week that if his wife could go into labor any minute, he said, "I will leave Augusta if my wife goes into labor." It's his 5th Masters appearance. He had a bogey-free 66 at Bay Hill and then 64 at TPC, a 66 yesterday chasing Bryson DeChambeau. When you look at what Scheffler has done, his numbers, 22 rounds of 68 or less, 6 top 10s in 2024, and he's had 18 straight top 12 finishes last year. This guy, and yesterday he birdied 4 of the last 7. And Scheffler is just a machine now, and everybody is loving what Scheffler's doing. Same thing. Scheffler told the media primarily the same thing. I'm more mature now. I'm more comfortable.
I typically expect a lot out of myself, and so when things aren't going the way that they're supposed to be, especially when I was younger, I would get pretty frustrated, and I try to manage myself a lot better than I did back then, and I'm seeing some good results of that. But days like today, I mean, it's very easy to say, "Hey, stay patient. Don't make too many mistakes out there," and all that stuff, yada yada. But it's, I think, a lot easier said than done for sure.
Yeah, easier said than done. But anyway, these guys, I love it. Anyway, 48-year-old Tiger has to finish. He pegs it at 14, as I just said, a 23-hole day. 9 groups to finish. Max Homa, 4 under through 13. Freddie Couple shot 80 yesterday. Ricky Fowler, 76. Dustin Johnson, +1 through 10. And Phil Mickelson shot 73 yesterday, so he's hanging in. All right, a couple of other stories, Joe, that caught my eye, of course. The Ohtani story continues to be just so bizarre. And so the interpreter, Mizuhara, interviewed with The Athletic. Okay. So they're breaking down all the things that, is going on with he had access to Ohtani's accounts because he helped set up the accounts, and then he calls the bank and he pretends he's Ohtani and says, "Oh, by the way, I need another 16,000. I need 190,000."
Oh my goodness.
I mean, he was betting anywhere between 160 and 190,000, but he had all access to these. And so 19,000 bets that the federal government found, 19,000 ranging from $160 to, 200,000. And he told the writer, this guy who follows the Dodgers for The Athletic, and by the way, it's a great athletic website. And he told this writer, he said, "I'm not a very good bettor, am I?"
You think? I mean, at some point, Pete Rose, same thing. Pete, stick to sliding head first in the second. Come on.
It was a 3-year span, 19,000 bets over 3 years. I'd have to do the math.
The house is going to win. You bet that much.
Yeah, 360, 300, 900. Carry the 4, 7. But anyway, that's a lot of. All right, let's take this case. He goes, technically, his quote was, "Technically, I did steal from Ohtani. It's all over for me. That'll do it."
Technically, I did.
Technically?
What happens in Japan to people who technically steal from somebody? He should be lucky he's there.
Yeah, a lot of things. Virginia's baseball team will go to Louisville. Big series for them. The men's lacrosse team has got Duke this weekend. Playing Duke. Yeah, I was thinking it was Carolina, but they play Duke this weekend, number 3 versus number 2. Always a great series as well. Oh yeah,
that's
lots
blue
of fun.
blood
And then
stuff in lacrosse.
Yeah.
What about the spring game? You mentioned you're coming up. You're going to be guests with
Bud Foster
for the spring game. They're going to drag you. The big turkey's going to chase you around the field. I understand, something like that. I may be giving.
Well, I have a pair of sunglasses with a nose and mustache. Remember those Groucho Marx glasses? I'm going to wear those. It was an invitation from Bud because of his foundation, and I was talking about it yesterday. His Lunch Pail Foundation has done such a great job, and so he Joe wanted me to come up. They're doing a dog and pony. They're kicking off a couple things in the fundraising effort for the summer. And so I said, we'd be more than happy. So we're basically taking Foster and Friends on the road, and we'll have more next week.
Okay.
Now, the Virginia spring game is a week from tomorrow. I won't be able to make both, but I'm going to go up, see the Tech spring game for the first time, and Bud and I are going to do a kind of a dog and pony, and we're going to, shake some hands, kiss some babies. And I just felt it was a good opportunity. I hate to go Masters weekend, but if all goes well, I'll be able to catch it anyway. So
there are TVs. There's these things now. You could probably watch. There are these new things, Mac. There are all the rage.
Exactly. Hey, yesterday, I have to admit, and with Masters Radio, which is really good. Being able to, to listen to the radio coverage is just as good. They do almost a better job than television because they get it quickly. And
I always wondered about that. People used to approach me as a guy who ran radio stations. They say, "Would you carry some golf on the radio?" I'm like, I'm trying to imagine what golf on the radio would sound like. I mean, I often tease myself when I get into a particularly boring monologue, or I think I'm being particularly boring. I chide myself. That I'm teetering on becoming the morning host on the paint drying channel, but I mean, how does golf on just
well they go it goes
perverse
it's a lot
curiosity.
like you love NASCAR. It's a lot like NASCAR coverage, and as long as you where they go quickly, they go, let's go this so Tiger Woods has a 12-footer for birdie on 16. Let's go out there now, and boom, they go. And it's they paint the picture just like any good radio play-by-play guy should do. They paint the picture. It's left to right. Tiger, it's rolling. It's in. So you can
switching.
Visualize.
Yeah.
You can really. These guys do a wonderful job, and they host it, and then they throw it just like NASCAR. They're going to turn 1. They're going to turn 2. Well, they're going to all these different holes with a lot of course reporters, and it really is wonderful coverage when you're in your car.
Okay.
I shouldn't be watching my phone when I'm in the car. So that's why I go to Masters Radio.
Well,
it's really good
stuff.
It's really good.
Okay,
yeah.
I was just, as somebody who has, ruined several walks in the woods, I would.
I remember Larry Richardson, my old boy, he said, "Hey, if we can land, I'll never forget this quote. If we can land an elephant on the downtown mall, we're going to do it." And I know exactly what he meant. Joe, I go back to when we covered the 10-miler.
Right.
In the old radio station bread truck. And we had a parking sign, and but we had the women's coverage on a motorcycle, and we're going back and forth in two-way. And we used to cover the 10-miler on radio live. I don't know if they still do it. We used to do it.
I don't think so, but
we did it. We loved it. We loved it.
Well, because you can do it, like you said. You get enough reporters out there, and you get somebody
Absolutely.
who's, the finish line, and then somebody is at the first rest stop, and who's coming through there, and you just have to have some people who are ready to go. It's
next week. All right, since we're talking coverage, next week I'll tell you about live coverage from a hot air balloon. When I was live above the city from a hot air balloon.
Well, I did that. I did this radio program. Well, it's the radio program in exile right now. I did Joe Thomas in the Morning live from a hot air balloon over Niagara Falls. So not only were we in a balloon, we weren't even over land. We were over Niagara Falls. And
we had a landing with what's his name, and I can't remember his name. Great guy, the Boris Head balloon, and we landed just off the number 3 green at Birdwood. And I went on. I said, you know what? I haven't hit that green all year. So I mean,
that's good.
But I learned how to land it. And then they dumped champagne. Did they dump champagne on your head when you landed finally?
No.
Like your maiden voyage?
No, a bunch of union guys came up and got in our face because while we were doing the broadcast, I happened to point out there were a bunch of city workers who had stopped working to watch the balloon go up over Niagara Falls. And let's just say their shop steward wasn't too happy with the fact that went over. Hey, you're the radio guy, right? What was that telling the whole city that we stopped working, huh? And I was like,
that's so
sorry.
good.
I was actually 5 union guys get out of a van, and that's not the beginning of a joke, but it was.
That's so good.
Good stuff.
That's
but
so
that's
good.
not as good
Little
as the
did I
line.
know.
I haven't hit this green all year. That's very good. That's good stuff, Mac. On that point, we will enjoy a weekend. Enjoy Blacksburg.
Will do. I'll have a full report on Monday. Full report.
And by the way, I was just told that MGM has Tech to win the spring game against Tech. So
the maroon.
Yeah,
take the maroon and the points.
It just says no. It just says Tech's guaranteed to win this week. So
all right, good stuff. Good
all
stuff.
Right, thank you, sir. You have a
all right, JoJo,
and we will talk to you on Monday.
I'll see you Monday morning.
Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you for letting us be of service to you. And coming up, Congressman Bob Good from the House Freedom Caucus in Virginia's 5th Congressional District will be joining us as the little box right I can't twist my arm. Right there says we should have done one of these things. That box says we're going to be on Rumble Monday morning, and it's scene set like that. It's blocking like that gets us on channels like Rumble. It's actually you guys who did it and getting us onto Rumble by following a page that doesn't do anything yet. I'm sure somebody in Rumble's algorithm headquarters, right after the National Security Administration finished overseeing things, said, what is this JTITM page? Why is everyone following it? Why are all these people starting to follow it? He hasn't done anything yet. Well, so we'll be able to both, and we're going to do both until YouTube says that's a bad boy, because I'm already up against it. We've already had one month suspension from YouTube for, I don't know, failure to signal a left turn. So we will be on Rumble as well. So it'll be a shared space there as well. A couple of emails I want to get to. This one comes from Gary. Joe, now that OJ has been released from life, there is speculation on how the Goldman's debt is going to be paid. OJ's bill has ballooned from $133,000 to $114 million over time. Biden's economic policies have not helped. I guess the high cost CPI index, Consumer Price Index, this week has made the final nail in his coffin. Gary in Berlin, New Hampshire. And that's an interesting question on some of these settlements that happen in these wrongful death cases and things like that. Certainly the Goldmans pursued this as recompense, not necessarily fiscally, but spiritually, I guess. So they've got the civil ruling against O.J. Simpson for being responsible for Ron's death, as well as his ex-wife, Nicole Brown. But how do you get the money? I mean, O.J. seemed very intent on getting his money back when he went and he thugged up on the memorabilia dealers in Vegas, getting him the actual 9-year sentence in jail. But that being said, it is a story that, and to be fair, I was actually in an area newsroom when the story broke, and texts started coming in. It was like, OJ, and I looked out into the newsroom, and there were a bunch of 20-somethings in the newsroom, and I said, I wonder if these folks even have any connection to who Orenthal James Simpson is. Mac told me a couple of funny stories in the green room before the notebook started of some of his students at Full Sail University who did an entire report. I guess they have to do these practice and pretend sports reports. And one kid did this whole report on the death of O.J. Simpson and did the whole athletic arc, USC to the Buffalo Bills and the record-setting rushing seasons and the Hall of Fame, and then went into acting. Because remember, O.J. Simpson was Dwayne Johnson before Dwayne Johnson is. I mean, minus the murder charges and the police investigation. Certainly, don't tell Dwayne I said that. But before it, and it's tough to remember. I think Jim Brown. obviously the Cleveland Browns legend before Joe Thomas was a Cleveland Browns legend. Jim Brown was the first who really broke big from NFL to movies. Roosevelt Greer did a lot of movies as well. Dick Butkus, famous, actually wound up being probably one of the most successful NFLers turned entertainers there was there. But now, now it's Howie Long, it's Chris Long, who's doing the same thing I am these days, only without all the Super Bowl rings. Me not having the Super Bowl rings. But he doesn't have any Virginia Association of Broadcasters awards. I have those. But it's not a competition. But Howie has done some movie acting, and of course, The Rock, who apparently now owns the name The Rock. And it makes you wonder if the I don't believe I remember reading anything if he passed. I should probably vet this story before I get too far into it. But there is a song called "I Do the Rock," and it was a moderate hit, back in the '80s, and it was to a degree successful, but it was by Tim Curry, the Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show. He did this song, "I Do the Rock." I wonder if is Tim Curry still with us? I know he had been grievously ill, and he had fallen into some very grave health issues. No, he's still alive. Okay, so O.J. dead at 76. Tim Curry still alive at 77. But now that Dwayne Johnson owns the name The Rock, does Tim Curry have to pay him royalties every time somebody plays the song "I Do the Rock" on the radio? Which, to be fair, is probably out once every solar eclipse. But it does happen on occasion. People do know that it exists. But random points on this is that O.J., this kid did this whole arc on O.J. and then went into his acting career. And then at the end of the report, Mac was telling me, he said, and was also acquitted in the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown, and Ron Goldman. And the director of the school came up to him, put his arm around him and said, "Really? That was the story you wrote about O.J. Simpson?" And there's so much more about it. But think about the trial. And I mentioned this earlier in the program. The trial gave us the Kardashians. Everyone here knows the Kardashians. Well, if it wasn't for the O.J. trial, you don't have the Kardashians. Why, Bruce Jenner might still be Bruce Jenner at this point if it wasn't for the Kardashians. So think about a world without the Kardashians. And I read a lot of science fiction. So, imagine the time travel scenario where Sam Beckett gets out of the quantum leap chamber and all of a sudden stops whoever actually killed Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. He says, having already said the headline, "The real killer can rest at ease this morning." But somehow intercedes, and whoever it is, some leather glove wearing assailant runs away because Sam Beckett shows up on the streets, jumping out of the quantum leap chamber. And they don't get killed, and there's no O.J. trial. Imagine a world. Think of the butterfly effect of no O.J. trial. There's a reasonable case that we don't even have the Black Lives Matter movement. Because the beginnings of the Black Lives Matter movement go back to Johnny Cochran's insistence that it became a racial issue. Remember Mark Furman, the racist cop, and Johnny Cochran rallying a black community, Chris Darden, the assistant district attorney, saying, "O.J.'s not a black man. He left the black community in his rearview mirror. I remember the press conference. Chris Darden was apoplectic that Johnnie Cochran was rallying a black community that hadn't, as Chris Darden, and I'm paraphrasing here, said, hasn't seen O.J. Simpson in the black community since he left to go to USC. But that was the battle cry. And so you can trace the roots of the Black Lives Matter movement to the O.J. trial. If none of that takes place, we don't have the Kardashians, which may or may not be a benefit to our societal evolution. You don't have Caitlyn Jenner. And you don't have the Black Lives Matter movement, possibly. I mean, it may have come along somewhere else. But it's just a moment to think about the impact of this case. But as all these texts started coming into the newsroom I was sitting in yesterday around lunchtime, I guess it was somewhere after 11 o'clock, it was like, OJ? Who's OJ? What does OJ stand for? Who's the juice? The juice was The Rock before The Rock was The Rock. The impact that trial had and the media's ridiculous coverage of it. And really, it's not even just the trial or that it happened. It was the 21st. Nancy Grace is still on. Donald Trump's one of Donald Trump's great legal defenders was one of O.J.'s dream team. Some of these famous lawyers that you see still to this day on television would have never been heard of if it hadn't been. But I think the funniest part of this whole coverage, and Gary, maybe you can share, is that the Los Angeles Times, the home paper of record for the O.J. Simpson trial, screwed up so badly as to, in the obituary, not even just in the news story, but in the obituary of Orenthal James Simpson, referred to him as Trump. In the obituary, the article in the Los Angeles Times referred to Trump having been released from prison instead of Simpson. The story, quoting, "Long before the city woke up on a fall morning in 2017, Trump walked out of Lovelock Correctional Center just outside of Reno, a free man for the first time in 9 years." Now, of course, they've gone in and corrected the story, and so that's, I'm sorry, we didn't mean Trump. We don't have any stories about Trump laying around in the templates about him being released from prison. No. That was, see. Meanwhile, the President of the United States signaling, and I think it's important to connect the Julian Assange case to the passage of Orenthal James Simpson, because here's a fellow who the President of the United States is now saying, yeah, we may just forget about it. After all that. I mean, it would be like, and to a great degree, it is very similar to, say, if Ron Goldman's dad all of a sudden woke up this morning and said, you know what? All is forgiven.
Your Friday forecast calls for some scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise partly sunny afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We'll have some breezy southwesterly winds. Friday night, scattered showers early, mostly cloudy with a low of 52. On Saturday, sunny skies, afternoon highs in the upper 60s. We're mostly clear and 46 on Saturday night, mostly sunny and 79 on Sunday. We're in the low and mid 80s for all of next week. From BlueRidgeLife.com, I'm forecaster Tommy Stafford. Now back to Joe Thomas in the morning.
Joe Thomas in the morning. Thank you. As the graphic will tell you, we are getting ready to head over to Rumble on Monday morning. Well, we're going to keep this feed up as long as we can. YouTube is very particular about this kind of stuff, so I'm not sure if they will allow us to continue once they find out that we're also sharing the video with Rumble, but we will see about that. Joining us now, though, from Virginia's 5th Congressional District for our Friday visit, he is Congressman Bob Good. Congressman Good, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I appreciate it. And how are you doing this Friday morning, sir?
Doing great, Joe. Appreciate being with you again. Thanks for having me.
So I spent a little time yesterday in a press gaggle with Virginia Senator Mark Warner. I was curious about the story that bubbled up this week regarding the Dolly and a potential cyber attack. But before I got to ask my question of Senator Warner, man, he just went on, I can't even say it was a screed. I think screed undersells it a little bit about the Freedom Caucus and the loss of the FISA reauthorization, and how could these people be standing in the way of the very safety of the American people, Bob, and a lot of folks, though, that I've talked to, listeners and followers, have said there was a great use of the tools to keep the minority voice heard and listened to. Talk about what happened this week with the FISA rule, as it were.
Well, I can tell you that I don't think many of my Freedom Caucus colleagues are particularly concerned about what Senator Mark Warner might think of them, or what he might think of the tactics that we might employ in the House. We are a bicameral body. We are a separate body, I should say. And the founders originally intended that the House and the Senate wouldn't even talk to one another until the legislation was complete, because they wanted the bodies to operate totally separately. And we're responsible for what we do in the House, and the Senate's responsible for what they do. And I think if both focus on that, the American people are best served. But to that effect, as it was, I guess it was Wednesday, or was it Thursday? I think it was Wednesday. The days run together here. 19 of us, 18 of my colleagues and I, just decided that the threat to the American people, as presented with the original FISA bill, wasn't sufficiently protecting their constitutional liberties, and we were concerned about it being reauthorized for 5 years without sufficient reforms. And so what we were able to negotiate by taking down the rule, as it were, and blocking the advancement of legislation initially, was to negotiate for a 2-year reauthorization instead of 5 years. And the reason that's important is if it's 5 years, that takes it beyond a hopeful Trump administration, where President Trump wouldn't have an impact on it, where we wouldn't have, hopefully, a Republican majority in House and Senate, and to be able to put better reforms in place to go even further to limit the potential abuse of power of the federal law enforcement against U.S. citizens. In addition, we got some concessions to make sure that there would be a fair amendment process on the warrant amendment, Andy Biggs's warrant amendment, that requiring, again, a warrant for surveillance of U.S. citizens, and then my friend Warren Davidson's amendment that say that the federal government cannot purchase data that it would otherwise have to have a warrant for. That's called the Fourth Amendment is not for sale piece of legislation that Warren Davidson has sponsored. So we felt like that was a reasonable win to go to 2 years instead of 5 years to get a stronger commitment on those two other amendments. And we also didn't want to. We knew that if we were to not be willing to work towards something. I think we're going to vote today on it, by the way, on the 2-year deal, that we were in danger of possibly people like Senator Mark Warner in the Senate working with the House to have it pass on suspension of the rules for 5 years instead of 2. And we might not get those votes on the amendments that we were concerned about. So we thought 2 years was a reasonable win to allow it to move forward. And still, we will vote likely against the legislation because we still don't think it goes far enough, but we'll get members of the House and the Senate on record. Where do they stand on the warrant requirement? And where do they stand on the federal government being able to purchase data that they should otherwise have to have a warrant for? Those are good for the American people to see where their representatives stand on those issues.
And this is a story that I think has gone back to 2002, 2003, Congressman, is, how does this sort of surveillance become allowed, become rubber stamped even through these FISA courts? Talk about the importance of making sure it's not just that the warrant rules are in place, but the people who are overseeing these judges, these FISA judges, things like that, are being as strict as they should be.
Yes. So it's called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, as you know. So the supposed intent, of course, is to be able to surveil effectively, spy on effectively foreigners, particularly outside the United States, who wish us harm. But there's been some 5 million instances of where it's been used to spy on U.S. citizens without a warrant just from 2019 to 2022. And so those who want to empower the deep state, want to empower the spies to continue to spy, want to have unlimited power in the hands of federal law enforcement, which has lost a lot of faith and trust in the American people, by the way. During those 5 million that I talked about, it was used to spy on people who went to D.C. during January 6th, to surveil them, to those who showed up at protests around the country. It was used to surveil people who gave to certain political campaigns. There's many abuses of power. And of course, President Trump has famously said, it was used to, those powers were used to spy on his campaign. And so there's exceptions in place, to your point about, the judicial system and so forth. There's exceptions in place in the amendments that we've put forward that protect or allow exceptions when loss of life is at threat due to an urgent situation. And it will continue to allow the federal government to surveil, again, foreign actors, terrorists, and so forth. And if it's been demonstrated that a U.S. citizen has had contact with a foreign terrorist, and that's a very small number of cases, Joe.
Right.
We're talking a couple of thousand out of 5 million over 4 years. Those are the ones where you have to get a warrant, and those are not unreasonable to have happen. That's what's critical to protect the American. And one last point I'll make is that the government and those advocating against the warrant requirement haven't been able to give us one example, not even one example, where a terrorist attack in the U.S. was prevented because they unlawfully spied on a U.S. citizen to obtain information that prevented a terrorist attack in the United States. They haven't been able to give us one example.
Well, and meanwhile, I mean, it strikes us here on the users' end of all this stuff, Bob, that while they talk about TikTok bans, they're looking for rubber stamp on the ability to go in, as you mentioned, purchasing Wi-Fi data from a Starbucks or something like that in order to backdoor into, and we watched them do it with Bank of America. These things that you guys are proposing certainly seem like that locks that down a little bit more.
Yeah, it would. I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect. Again, that's why we like 2 years instead of 5 years, so we get another bite at the apple more quickly as we see the impact of these reforms. Again, the warrant amendment may not pass, Joe. It may not pass. We're going to do everything we can to influence our colleagues to vote for that protection. But if a majority of members of Congress vote against that warrant requirement for U.S. citizens, that's going to be a really bad thing. That's why, again, if it happens, at least it's 2 years instead of 5 years. And the same thing with the purchase of the data that you mentioned, or Wi-Fi hotspots away from when you're in a private situation. Again, that's where that data comes in, where you're at a coffee shop, a restaurant, a hotel, and they have the federal government should be able to access that data that can be collected through a Wi-Fi hotspot without a warrant to purchase that for you as a U.S. from you on you as a U.S. citizen.
Last one for you, Congressman. The story and one of the questions I was in the gaggle to ask Mark Warner about from the Senate Intel Committee is I watched a story arc this week where a story came out that there was a possibility there was a cyber attack on the Dolly, the freighter ship that hit the Key Bridge. And then, of course, the internet took the ivermectin defense and saying, you can't ask stuff like that. But Mark Warner's answer was, oh, we're looking into this still. I'm concerned that they're going to use the possibility of a cyber attack on the Dolly to, bulwark more Congress people like you into giving in and just saying, yeah, sure, surveil people more so that this doesn't happen. Is that a concern there, or have I been in the room too long?
Well, I think it's always a concern. We're right to be suspicious and critical, constructively critical of our government. We've certainly learned to do so. And I can tell you, Joe, just 2 days ago, I was in a meeting where we had two FBI whistleblowers, former agents, come and talk to a couple dozen of us members of Congress on the conservative side. And the things I heard from those two agents about what really happens in the FBI would say, hey, we're not going far enough, quite frankly, and that, to restrict the powers of the federal law enforcement, the ability to abuse those powers, the ability to weaponize those powers, talking about things like them being incentivized from a bonus system to come up with crimes and charges and things like that.
Oh, my God.
The punitive, retaliatory things that happen when someone raises concerns. Like one of the agents, former agents, said that he was told that they needed to go arrest some citizens at their home in SWAT gear, and he raised his hand and said, well, that doesn't sound right. These people are willing to surrender. They're willing to comply. Why are we going to go out there in SWAT gear and arrest these folks this way? And he was retaliated against and punished for that. And like a lot of other things, it's the process that's the punishment. The ultimate outcome may be exoneration if for those who have the wherewithal to be able to endure and to fight through this, but it's the process they put you through. And these two agents have suffered tremendously just because they were willing to stand up for the right things. And so seeing that further confirms to me that we don't need to be given additional powers to the federal law enforcement. The Constitution must come first. The constitutional liberties must come first. We don't sacrifice those in the name of safety.
Congressman Bob Good is on with us. James writes into the YouTube feed, thank you, Congressman Good, for standing up for our liberties and stand firm for our conservative values. And thank you for your time this morning. We'll do it again next Friday. Keep fighting the good fight there, and let's win this country back for the citizens.
Amen. Thank you, Joe. Great to be with you, my friend.
And thank you all for joining us here on Joe Thomas in the Morning. I appreciate it. And we'll be back on Monday morning. As we said, that Monday morning we are going to be on Rumble as well as YouTube here. So wherever you presume to join in with us, we have to download a bunch of stuff, and trust me, I'm going to need 48 to 50 hours to figure out. If I'm downloading software, there are people in my family going, oh God, he just bought that computer, oh no. So probably a couple of rounds with tech support will have to go on with that, but we will be both here and on YouTube on Monday. Who knows when the radio comes, and Greg writes in, Bob Good is great. Tony the Tiger reference to wrap it up this morning. So for all of us here, thank you for joining us in, and we'll be back on Monday morning here on YouTube as well as on Rumble. For you, Monday morning show. I should tell you a little bit. Governor Glenn Youngkin will be part of Monday morning show. We're thinking that Congressman Ben Cline will also be part of Monday's show, and you as well. Now that you can text me, and believe me, that's just what I needed, is another distraction here while I'm reading the texts you guys are posting to the channel. But I appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and until next week, so long, and thanks for all the fish.